Man, was this unexpected. Big news, everyone! Funimation doesn't exist. Funimation is now, as a brand, dead. This is not the news I was expecting to have this week, and I really wish they waited at least until I cut my hair before I'd have to make a video about it. So in the continuing saga, starting from when Funimation's parent company, Sony, bought Crunchyroll a number of months back, and we already had videos on that, what once seemed to be Crunchyroll being the one who would be extinct at the end of this whole debacle, instead Funimation is the one that is going to be saying bye-bye. And it's like, on the one hand, you almost saw that one coming to an extent. A lot of the wording when the original buyout happened seemed to say that not specifically Sony was buying Crunchyroll, but Funimation was buying Crunchyroll, because these two companies have had a rivalry for a good number of years, and this was just kind of like one of those, aha, our team won, or something. We're the ones buying out Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll answers to us now. Man, did that not age well. And it's not just Funimation, there are actually a number of brands that are just being dissolved and absorbed into the Crunchyroll brand as a whole. And this could mean a number of things, but that's all long term, and that's kind of what we need to discuss. The possibilities. That's what I like discussing. Possibilities. In the short term, this doesn't mean all that much. From what we've been told and from what I can gather, all this really means is that anything that was once Funimation is now being called Crunchyroll. Now, because of that, that's going to mean a lot of interesting things down the line, but for the immediate moment, everything is the status quo, as it was a week ago. It's just that now Funimation employees are now Crunchyroll employees, Funimation locations and offices are now Crunchyroll locations and offices, and everything else is kind of staying the same for the moment. But inevitably, there's going to be some downsizing. Because that was the thing, both Funimation and Crunchyroll were rivals in the streaming anime space. They were both pretty much trying to do a lot of the same things. So now that they are one, you are going to have a lot of doubling up as far as staff, as far as priorities, and certain things are going to get cut. The question becomes, what are those things, and how will other things get moved and reorganized and rejigged as things go on? So I personally have a couple of questions that I'm not going to get direct answers to, because why the hell would they tell me? But there are still things that I want to discuss, as I don't know if downsides are really what it is, because anything could be a positive or a downside. It all just depends on how you look at it. Like, in the one hand, this whole thing is a downside. Like, yes, having all of your anime in one place is great. It sounds great, and they love using that for marketing. But at the same time, if that one location is shit, that's going to be a problem. And I'm not saying that Crunchyroll's player is shit. Actually, Crunchyroll's player, I personally have had far better luck with than Funimation's player, though I know that is not common to me. I've actually seen quite a few people being really pissed off about this because Funimation has always worked better for them than Crunchyroll stuff. So to them, this is a massive downgrade, and I can see that. I guess it just depends on where you are and also how you actually interact with these mediums, whether you're using various apps on like consoles or mobile, or whether you're trying to watch it through a browser on your PC, which is more than likely what I try to do, and Funimation's website has historically been shit. But, and I'll give it credit to this, Funimation's website has a lot of good things about it, things that I hope that Crunchyroll takes to heart if they decide to do a redesign and rebranding, which I hope they do, because they're trying to absorb so much, and they have, you might as well, I'd like to say you might as well do this, but they might say, hey, it's too much money, and why would we do that? And the why would we do that is such a big thing. So like, I like the fact that I could watch something on Funimation and I can swap between sub and dub or alternate versions really easily. It's like just a different audio track or a different subtitle track. That's great. Crunchyroll doesn't do that. Crunchyroll is individual videos. Like, you can go to a section on a particular anime and the sub and dub are completely separate entities, almost visually like they're separate seasons. And that just looks wrong, and it's confusing, and I hope that they fix that. But at least for me on the browser, Funimation's website almost never worked. Even if I was logged in, sometimes a video wouldn't play, sometimes when it would play, it wouldn't stream very well, and there'd be stuttering, and I never had that problem with Crunchyroll. What I really want is I want the best things from both to be in one place, but we all know that's probably not going to happen. So let's talk about some of the downsides. There's the inevitable monopoly of all of this. I've spoken before, I think, Or maybe I just thought it. Either way, there is a particular problem that I see as far as lack of competition that Crunchyroll now faces. As far as the anime sphere on its own, Crunchyroll's real only competition is High Dive and Retro Crush. So much smaller entities that cover very specific niches compared to Crunchyroll's big bombastic, hey, we have all of the big stuff. Now, technically, there is also competition from Netflix, but Netflix, as a whole, as a brand, their anime section is small. They've been growing it, and that is a massive concern, or at least should be a massive concern for Crunchyroll. They've been getting more involved into the space. They've been licensing more anime. They have been helping to produce a lot of anime as well, and that should worry Crunchyroll to the point where I would hope that they would up their game. However, as I'm pretty sure that I've spoken about before, Crunchyroll and formerly Funimation's biggest issue from a service perspective is that what they license is more important than how they provide their service to you. And that's something that I've always disagreed with. From what I have seen from both of these companies' mentality, it's always been it doesn't matter how good our streaming service is as long as we are the only ones with the exclusive rights to the biggest anime that everyone wants to watch. And the downside to that is you are forced to use their crappy service if it doesn't work well for you in order to watch these things legally, which only gives the people who are in favor of various forms of piracy even more ammunition and talks about how what they do is even better, though that's a completely different ball of wax, because even if it was the perfect system, the perfect service, there would still be pirates. And you can't fight that, so it is not a simple matter of just saying that it's a service problem and calling it a day. There are so many other factors to it, but we're not getting into that. This being a monopoly has a lot of problems. Now, that's that section put out of the way. The longer term is going to be very interesting to me because Crunchyroll and Funimation have handled different aspects of providing anime to people. And I'm interested to see whether or not a lot of that is going to be kept, just rebranded, or what is going to be killed off. Funimation, for example, if you're comparing what it has done historically to Crunchyroll, it offers two major things that Crunchyroll either doesn't do or hasn't historically done or outsources, which is home video releases and dubbing. Now, Crunchyroll has provided dubs for things, but they've not done that anywhere near to the same level that Funimation has historically. And when they have, they've usually outsourced it to other firms, other groups, and they're the ones that have done the dubbing, and that is fine. Funimation has their own in-house dubbing group. So will Crunchyroll decide to keep that? Will they continue to operate it? What types of voice actors will they hire? How will that interact with the union? Will it interact with the union? Is that good? Is that bad? Lots of questions there. But then there's also home media releases, which is a big thing for me. We've been seeing a lot now with not just like anime, but like streaming services in general of how sometimes you might have a really big favorite show and it will leave the streaming service. Content is never permanent on streaming services, and I feel like every single streaming service out there has examples of this, of where shows will just disappear and you can't watch them anymore. As much as streaming is extremely convenient, because you can, at this point in the world, as long as you have reasonable internet, you can stream on virtually anything that has access to the internet. And while that's extremely convenient to have massive libraries of anime at your literal fingertips, if parts of that library disappears, you don't really have it, do you? You don't actually own it. You don't guarantee that you have access to it. Because on a whim, those licenses could disappear and then they're gone. And the reason why that matters, I think, more for anime is because for the Western companies, they are licensing this. In some cases, they are on the production team and have a little bit more pull, of course, but for the vast majority of anime that exists, especially like old classics and things, they are licensing it, and those licenses can expire. So Funimation's home video division has always been kind of this great portion of it where if you wanted to own a thing and make it convenient and always available to you, you had that option, and more options are always good. Always good. It's not to say that Crunchyroll hasn't done home video releases. They have, sort of. There have been shows where they have released things, and even I own box sets that have the Crunchyroll logo on them. But far more often, some of the best anime that ends up on Crunchyroll service never gets a home media release, because that's a different license that they historically have not cared about purchasing, because it's a lot of extra money for them. And why would they, when they just want everyone to go and use their streaming service? That is their main product. So we don't know what they're doing with dubs yet. My hope is that they take the Funimation dubbing group to heart to figure out the best way forward for actually using it, for actually dubbing things. So making better content, being fair to the people who work on it, and being able to provide that to us, the viewers, relatively easily. And then to keep up their home media releases so that we can actually, physically own things and not be reliant on their streaming services when they inevitably lose licenses for things, because they will. And I like having access to a library that I don't have to worry about. Everything back here, I can just watch right now if I want to, and I don't have to worry about it. If my internet's down, doesn't matter. I got DVD and Blu-ray players. I'm good. So if Crunchyroll kills that, not gonna be a happy camper. And then lastly, it's things that we've already talked about, just kind of flipped around slightly. So the last time we talked about this, one aspect of the monopoly that I was kind of interested in, and still am interested in, is how the Japanese side is going to handle this. Because now, with Crunchyroll being the biggest name and not really having other options outside of Netflix, making it so that Japanese companies only have so many avenues to access the Western audience might not be good. Because if they don't want to have to deal with Sony, if they don't want to have to deal with Crunchyroll, if bad relations ever end up happening, that cuts off a lot of things. And there's no extra avenue for that. It's not like if one Japanese company has a bad rap with Crunchyroll, they can then go to their competitor, Funimation. It's not a thing anymore. And seeing how those cross-continental company dealings are going to happen going forward is very interesting. Ultimately, I want to be excited for this, but it's hard for me to be excited by such a thing when I can constantly see all the potential problems to it. I'd like to hope, in the world that we live in, that this could be a positive benefit for the generalized viewer, that they can take this opportunity to take what worked with Funimation and what worked with Crunchyroll and combine them into a better service than either of them. That would be the goal. But if they're still stuck in the mindset that it doesn't matter how good their service is, as long as they have the anime, people will come. If they keep that mindset, we're going to have problems. We're going to have a lot of problems, because there are going to be continual problems with their service, with their streaming. No one's going to like it. Everyone's going to begrudgingly deal with them, or not. And I feel like that's worse. I just don't like not knowing, and I think that bothers me the most, because there are all these questions that could have very good answers. But we don't know them yet. We don't know how they're going to be absorbing things. We don't know how many people are going to inevitably be let go, because you have two teams that basically do the exact same thing. And why do that when you only need one? And you're not just going to have a supersized team. People are going to get let go. And when people are let go, how does that affect things moving forward? Are you accidentally going to let go the people that could actually fix things and make things better? Will you suddenly cut things that worked really well because you don't have the money or the know-how or the drive to keep them? We don't know this. We don't know any of this. And that's why I can't get excited about this. I want to be able to say, hey, I don't have to worry about having both a Crunchyroll and a Funimation subscription anymore, because it's all just one, and I can just go to the one place to access all streaming anime. And in the short term, that's fine. And that works. It's long term I'm worried about. Because, I got a wall scroll for Place Further Than the Universe behind me. Right? And you want to know why I have a wall scroll for it? Because I don't have a physical copy of the show. Because all it's going to take is for a couple of months from now, I don't know, a licensing agreement breaks down, and now Place Further Than the Universe is not available on streaming services anymore. That could be a thing. And then what? I've spent a lot of time advocating for legal avenues to watch anime, because I feel like, yes, there are problems with the system. There are always problems with the system. But being able to, in some way, shape, or form, financially support the industry is better than not, because if nobody financially supports the industry, it'll just evaporate and then no more anime. But at the same time, I want to make sure that what we get out of it and how the industry is able to actually grow and become better is something that happens. So, short term, Funimation is now just Crunchyroll. Just assume that that's how it's going to be, and we're going to figure out what that means going forward as soon as we get more information as to how this merger is going to affect us, it's going to affect further seasons, is going to affect the state of the anime industry in the West. Because that's a major thing that has just happened, and I'd like to hope it means good things. But it doesn't mean that I can't also be skeptical and worried and cautious. I'm stepping into this with high hopes, and hopefully we'll be better off for it. So thank you for watching. Thank you for the patrons and names that are listed here so I can make these types of rant videos on top of the other ones that I am working on, that I'm being delayed from working on, because, you know, they just had to drop this week. I realize it's the start of the month, so it makes the most sense for them to do that, but still. And a very special thank you to patrons Hector Montemayor, Rifen Bonaparte, Omar Showman, City Yamako, and Wago221 for being especially awesome. And until next time, watch more anime. Where? We're gonna find out soon enough, won't we? But until then, stay frosty.